10th, 2025. This is Information Security Now. Information Security Now is a live stream about hacking, cyber, technology, social media, and as well, really any sort of new age technology, information based event that's occurring. And there's several very big events occurring. And the topic of this live stream, at least part of the topic, will be social media and the banning on social media across various nations. So we have examples of this. Many of the social medias we have here in the United States are not available in other countries, specifically China, who's able to provide their own suite of technologies and social media. So when China or the US bans one of the other individuals' technologies, there's national security risk, as well as it seems that's the number one reason, or allow the products to have a market within their own nation. And so the technology develops within their own nation. And we're seeing that here in the United States with tariffs. But regarding social media, one very huge current event is the reaction in Nepal in what's being called the quote unquote Gen Z protest is huge. And that was in response to a ban on social media within within Nepal. And I believe one of the other implications is it's being called the quote unquote a corruption sort of corruption protest or corruption reform. And it goes to the lack of complete privacy. And I believe there were some questions about inequality across the government. And when those questions arose, there was a ban on social media implemented. And in response to that ban, you had extreme protests within the country. And those extreme protests were it seemed very devastating. But here I wanted to speak about the all the implications of this, because to one degree you have wealth inequality being displayed on social media, which is a huge item. I mean, you see that all the time, people flaunting the best of their lives, and much of various social medias, and I've spoken about this before, where live streaming is really the most authentic form. You see people like iShowSpeed, who is probably the number one influencer in the world right now and has had world tours. You saw YouTube this past Monday or Friday evening had the Chargers Chiefs games. Go Chargers. And I believe it had 17 million viewers, which was bigger than some number on Peacock. But if you were immersed in it, there was also live streaming, so you could watch with a certain fan doing a live stream. But then you have these more, I think Instagram is the most notable social media, where the algorithm allows you to display yourself, display the best moments of your life. It allows you to highly filter what you expose. So the authenticity might not be there. It might be the big moments in your life. And when these moments are public, and we've spoken about this as well, there is no privacy. There's little to no privacy in the world anymore. Very little. Your location, your going abouts. I mean, the chance of you being recorded multiple times a day, unless you don't leave your home, is high, very high. And at this point, with hackers and whatnot, you hear some of these hacks coming out. You might be being recorded in your own home. But the idea that you can go outside, even across your neighborhood, across your town, and not be recorded in many of those instances in 2025 is naive. It's naive. High use implementation of smart cameras, smart doorbell cameras, especially smart doorbell cameras. We all see videos of those all the time. So there is little to no privacy. So these instances of wealth disparity are very on display for people. And not just that, you can see them across nations too in a way that is so consistent. And it goes to this idea of kind of these, I don't want to say mental illnesses, I don't want to say illnesses, stigmas with people who use excessive amounts of social media. But not just that, you're exposed to it daily. So when you're exposed to, say, the happenings in across the nation, and you see some nations have an obviously different form of government or whatever that might be lifestyle, it really affects, it seems to be really effective. And we've seen that across multiple nations. And in Nepal, we saw an instance where it's very difficult. These social medias and this technology has become quite intrusive, quite invasive, and there is no privacy anymore. And one one of my startups, Zayuk, it handles decentralized asset ownership, specifying with HOAs at the moment, but that's a basis of our technology is improved transparency. There is little to no transparency in 2025. The financial markets are coming to realize this. You have in the use case that Zayuk has chosen, HOAs, is a real decentralized asset ownership model. And so there, before, I would say the technology's probably been around for maybe 10 years to really do it, but it's a slow implementation of a truly decentralized, high transparency system. And that's just speaking about the company I started up. And it's in accordance with many laws being passed as well throughout the nation of the US. But then when we talk about general use, general life in a social media age, we're talking about hyper virality. When things go viral, they go extremely viral. We've seen so many instances of this. You saw people get famous, go up, and you see, excuse me, you see these instances that are extremely viral and everyone's aware. And depending on your social media ingest, you have different intake streams at different intake rates. But there's so much, there's hyper networks in effect right now. And yesterday, I believe there was, or 2 days ago, there was the All In Podcast Summit where they had Mark Cuban and Tucker Carlson on. And Tucker Carlson mentioned there hasn't really been a movement in the West since, he said, since the Mongol conquests of Asia and West and Europe. I don't know how deep into Europe they went, but that's a hyper networking effect, whether that be the internet, whether that be the price of flight travel, whether that be hyperglobalization through businesses, social media, especially in the last 15 years, which goes back to the internet, the mobile phone, the price of the mobile phone. You see people who live on the street but have a mobile phone, and I don't know what type of connectivity they have, but if they're in an area with free Wi-Fi. And I just bring this up because you have multiple instances of this. We saw social media be extremely effective in communicating between people. You've seen issues within the United States as well. Many instances become hyper viral. I've spoken to people who live abroad and they say these same things, whether it's I had a friend who lived in Chile and they mentioned the hyper virality during the protests of 2019. France is in a devastated state right now, and they are considering also handling social media, possibly implementing some sort of ban. And it's interesting to consider that when you see the reaction in Nepal, not to say that would happen again, but they're very effective, these social medias, and it's very influential on people, and it's important to consider their implications. I'm sure we all are. Not actually, I'm not sure about that, but it is something to consider. And so we'll continue. JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, affected as a result of the cyber attack September 1st. Some data was affected. Those that had data affected will be contacted. Continue at this pace. Sorry for continued disruption. Production issues, dealer sales, handovers, and parts orderings are also affected. That's huge. JLR has been rebuilding its internal IT system since it shut down. That's very devastating. The auto market is not easy. The tariffs in the United States have hurt Jaguar Land Rover, I believe. What happened? Autocar reported issues affecting JLR on 1 September when dealers couldn't register new cars on new plate day. JLR began shutting down systems on 2 September in the process of rebuilding them. On September 3, Scattered Spider claimed responsibility for the hack attack, along with a new group, Shiny Hunters. CISA warned about the flaw earlier this year. Well-known flaw in SAP NetWeaver third-party software used by JLR was exploited to access the data. That is huge. That's a huge piece of information, if that's true, because you don't know. This is being stated by the hacking group that a member of the group told the Telegraph that a well-known flaw in SAP NetWeaver, the third-party software used by JLR, was exploited to access the data. JLR told Autocar in a statement, there's no evidence customer data has been stolen. But that's important. I mean, people like to speak about just get your product out there, but there are some instances. I mean, JLR is an older company, and they're an automaker also. So these automakers are becoming some of the top technology companies are going to need to become some of the top technology companies in the world with the computers and the price. I don't know if people have been seeing, but the price of the robo taxi, based off of what I've been seeing on X, is very low. Very low. Seems to be lower in the instances that people post online, which might not be every instance, significantly. And you don't know if that's going to continue. But if it is in certain metropolitan areas, that could be a big deal. Okay, we'll continue. So we spoke about a couple days ago the NPM packages, more than 2 billion times each week, compromised briefly with malicious software 2 days ago, quickly contained and was narrowly focused. Similar attack with slightly more nefarious payload could lead to a disruptive malware break. That's good. That's good it wasn't more significant. The attackers injected a piece of code that silently intercepts cryptocurrency activity in the browser, manipulates wallet interactions, and rewrites payment destinations so that the funds and approvals are redirected to attack-controlled accounts without any obvious signs to the user. That's a malicious payload, and it's a very effectively done malicious payload. Browser-based interceptor. Content shown tampering with API calls and manipulating what users' app believe they are signing. I would guess I haven't written this, but can't be too difficult to write this. But it might be, I don't know. Still impressive to pull it off in guards. Even if it's not difficult to write, to execute it and to implement it in the world is not easy. And I don't want to romanticize any of this at all. Okay, this is the Fed scoop. Acting. No, I'm going to skip this one. This is from Reuters. U.S. sanctions billion-dollar cyber scam networks in Myanmar and Cambodia. Cyber scam operators, booming industry that the U.S. says stole tens of billions from Americans last year. Forced into debt, bondage, and defrauding strangers online. Threatens the well-being and financial security of Americans and subjects thousands of people to modern slavery. That's according to this. Sanctioned entities include 9 companies and individuals. Okay. All right. This is from NextGov. FEMA begins security overhauls following cyber incident and employee firings. August 29th. Vulnerabilities. Threat actor breached FEMA's network and threatened the entire department. Vulnerabilities linked to a series of internet security holes and applications that weren't entirely secured across the agency's tech environment. Security office blocked agency from accessing a handful of apps and websites. FEMA staffers can no longer disable internet security services provided by Zscaler without a password. Prior to the new password rule, employees could navigate to an interface and disable Zscaler security controls within seconds by typing a reason for disabling the services into a query box. The security layers could be turned off indefinitely or until the corresponding laptop computer was restarted. Poor mobile device configs tied to a Slack channel used by a major government contractor could have also contributed. FEMA used Teams, and this contractor used Slack. Contractor does not have the same security controls in place for users who access its Slack workplace. Okay, big deal. Big deal. So BBC, it's taken 3 years to recover from China hack, election watchdog says. Fully recover from a hack that saw private details of 40 million voters accessed by Chinese cyber spies. Electoral Commission was publicly reprimanded for a litany of security failures. Spy undetected. Huge mistakes. Enormous shock. And a few years to recover from it. Hackers breached in August 2021 using a security flaw in a popular software program called Microsoft Exchange. Exploited. Despite months of warning, the digital hole was being exploited by suspected spies around the world, and organizations were being warned to download a software patch to protect themselves. Despite months of warning, the commission failed to do so. This is huge, and it's difficult for antiquated systems, legacy systems that do not have continuous integration, continuous deployment cycles in their app, and it really drives up the cost. And I know people say like, oh, you don't really need to do all that, but how fast do you want to go? What do you want your cost to be? You want to lower your costs and give yourself a chance to fight another day. And understanding what's going on, it's tough. I mean, we live in a very technology heavy world where people, even people who understand this are at the mercy of it, and people who don't understand it are even more so at the mercy of it because they don't have as much information and awareness into defending themselves from something malicious. And this is why cryptocurrency is still, most of it is still high risk, just because there's a chance, it could go up significantly, and it has gone up significantly, but that doesn't mean it hasn't entailed significant risk. Huge hacking sprees across domains, across cryptocurrencies. You see people get robbed for their cryptocurrency because if you have that in cash and some sort of security or some sort of FDIC backed banking or storage reserve system, CD, whatever that may be, it's under the government's eye. Whereas if it's in crypto, if it's on blockchain for Bitcoin, this is the big thing. Who's gonna? One of the primary forms of government is protecting people from looting bandits. That's the basis of most government, is to protect you from looting bandits. And there's a lot of ways that can be interpreted, but with Bitcoin, there's very little. There seems to be much less, and you're not guaranteed. Okay, so we'll continue. Cybersecurity failures. This is incredible because it's also coming from the voting system. So We'll talk about Zayuk voting. Zayuk has a voting protocol across mobile, gives you the ability to vote in your neighborhood, in your property, take polls, and do various things of that nature. All right, we'll continue. Not keeping software up to date was several basic security mistakes. Formal reprimand to the Electoral Commission. This is huge. I mean, this year, the Electoral Commission, that's really huge. Voting, I mean, I understand voting. Voting is a primary feature in Zayuk's safe for HOAs and for decentralized asset ownership. There were 6 elections during the period that hackers were inside the commission's IT networks. Commission says it doesn't know what the hackers were doing or what information they may have downloaded. Could have caused major disruption if they had installed malicious software or hampered communications. Well, that's not good. We will continue. This is an interesting one. So we spoke about Swissborg $40 million hack. That was in relation to the, I believe, let's read this. So this is by the block.co. Kiln exits Ethereum validators in a safety move after Swissborg's $40 million hack. Staking platform Kiln said it's starting to exit its Ethereum validators in response to an exploit incident that affected Swissborg. Monday, Swissborg lost about 193,000 SOL, worth roughly $40 million due to the security breach. And I'm just curious if that is the NPM security breach. An orderly exit of all its Ethereum validators following Monday's exploit targeting. $40 million in losses in Solana. Incidents stem from hackers exploiting a vulnerability in an API provided by Kiln, Swissborg's staking partner, which allowed unauthorized access to wallets used in Solana Earn program. Platform has pledged full reimbursement for its treasury and confirmed that core user funds remain secure. Okay, let's go. On Monday, NPM software. I still can't tell if this was connected. It seems it wasn't connected. The NPM issue. It seems this may have been a separate API issue that allowed an unauthorized caller. That's very difficult. Being a validator, many people might not understand the validator aspect, but it's fairly simple. You just have people that you define to be your, I don't know it in terms of Solana. I understand it more in terms of XRP, and XRP's validators are unique to XRP, but then Zayuk for HOAs, we have a set of validators depending on the issue. If it's a rule, then it's going to be legal. If it's a vote, it can be the election person. If it's a work order, you're going to want to have the person who brought in the work order and the manager or any manager you have, or if it's a non-manager HOA, the president. Okay, so we'll continue, or someone, treasurer, whatever that may be for y'all. All right, this is going to be the end of information security. Now, thank you, everyone. Hopefully, you're having a great week. It's hump day. Happy hump day, Wednesday, middle of the week almost, halfway through the day. Today, it'll be middle of the week. Yeah, get after it. Information security now. Reach out to me if you have any questions about InfoSec. If you're interested about InfoSec, I personally think it's a really interesting field. I don't go deep into it other than the fact that I'm aware security is high on my mind, understanding that some of these aspects are super devastating and they don't seem like fun to go through. And not to say that you can completely defend yourself, because you can't, but there are things you can do to improve your situation and the probability that this doesn't happen to you. Thank you, everyone, and have a great